A question I'm often asked is,
what is with that beard?
Another question I'm often asked is,
how many sewing machines do you really need?
Let's talk about that. Hello, sewing people of the internet. So, as of today, I have 12 sewing machines. And in this video, I'm going to show them all to you pretty quickly. I'm not going to go into great depth on any of them. And I'm going to tell you why I have so many, which ones I'm thinking about getting rid of, and if I had to get down to one sewing machine, which one would it be? So let's talk about some of the reasons why I have 12 sewing machines. One, they're cheap. The most expensive sewing machine that I currently own retails for $650. That's far and away the most expensive machine I have. My cheapest machines were free, and the ones that I've paid for, I've paid as little as $12 and as much as $150, I think. Most of my machines cost well under $100. Another reason why I have so many is, especially my older machines, represent kind of bygone days of really high-end craftsmanship that was available at that time. They're just beautiful machines, and they're a pleasure to work with, and many of them have a different character from one another, so it's quite pleasurable to use one machine for one job and then move on to another machine and enjoy the differences in the way the different machines behave. Let's go on a tour of my machines. This, of course, is my Sailrite Ultrafeed LS1. You might know this machine from my awesome review video. This machine is basically my go-to machine for most of the projects that I do. In addition to the Sailrite, I also have its predecessor, the Thompson Mini Walking Foot machine. Basically a twin. There are a couple of minor differences between these machines. I've talked about them in other videos. But you might think, well, since I have the Sailrite, I should get rid of the Thompson. No. For one thing, it's a great machine on its own. And also, it's really nice to have two machines with the exact same capabilities that use a lot of parts in common. For example, if I'm working on a project and I want two different colors of thread in different parts of the project, I can just have both of these threaded up with two different threads and go back and forth between machines rather than having to stop and rethread every time I want to change color or whatever. It's also nice that, you know, if something were to happen to the bobbin case for one of these, I've got another one in the other machine or something. Nice to have redundancy there. Plus, I really like the color of this one. This is easily one of my favorite machines, my Singer 237, the $20 thrift store score. Next to the Sailrite, this probably is the machine I use the most. These are my FOF machines, the 260 flatbed and the 360 with this really cool free arm setup. This was the first sewing machine that I looked for and bought on purpose. I learned about this machine and wanted one and sought one out and bought it. And it did not disappoint. It's an amazing machine and I love it. I later found this 360 for a great price, and so I had to have it to, you know, have the pair. There are two things to be aware of on these particular FOF machines. One is the drive belt is a particular kind of a cogged belt, and it's no longer available new anywhere that I'm aware of, and if it breaks, your machine is kaput. The other thing is it's very common for these machines to have the zigzag mechanism become stuck. The lubricant that was applied by the manufacturer over time chemically transforms itself into a glue, and the mechanism gets stuck, and that's what's going on with this machine. It won't go any farther than that. I had that repaired on this machine, and it cost as much to have this machine basically rebuilt as it cost me to buy it. I bought it for $150 and spent another $150 getting it rebuilt. I bought this one for $40 with the intention of making those repairs myself, and that was probably a year and a half ago. Maybe I'll get around to it at some point, maybe not. At the end of this video, I'm going to talk about which machine I would keep if I had to get rid of all the other machines. And while these are some of the most beautiful and well-made machines that I've ever seen, neither of these machines would be the one I would keep. All that said, this machine is probably the most pleasurable machine of mine to use. It sews so buttery smooth. It's really, really nice to use. This is my Singer 348. This machine was given to me by a family friend, and it's a pretty neat little machine. If I had seen this machine at a thrift store or a garage sale, I don't know if I necessarily would have bought it, although I love the color and it's really pretty. But now that I've used it a few times, it's actually quite a nice machine, and I'm glad I have it. For the sake of any particularly observant viewers who will wonder about it if I don't say something, there's nothing in this table. This came with a machine that I no longer have, but the Sailrite and Thompson machines and pretty much all my Singer machines will fit in this table. So I mostly just keep it around in case I want to put a machine in a table to use. So that brings me to the black Singers. You might want to grab a drink and get comfortable. From the invention of the sewing machine in the late 1800s or so, up through about the 1960s, the majority of sewing machines available were these black cast iron bodied machines, and there's just hundreds and hundreds of variations on that theme. I have 5 Singer sewing machines from this era. Before I show you these machines, I just want to point out that there's a great deal of variation between machines from this era. That's a gigantic time span to cover, and some of these machines, like this one, are the absolute cream of the crop. Just because you see a black sewing machine at the thrift store or the garage sale or whatever, doesn't necessarily mean it's an incredible sewing machine that you should buy at any cost. Some of them are really great and some of them are not. But I'm going to show you the ones that I have and tell you about them. So I'm going to get this one out of the way first. This was an impulse buy for me. This is a Singer 29-4 patcher. This machine was designed to be used by cobblers for repairing shoes. Interestingly, this machine has the tiniest bobbin I've ever seen. So here's the bobbin for the 29-4, and this is a class 66 bobbin from the Sailrite and some of my other machines. I found this machine at an antique store. It was just the machine head, didn't come with the treadle base for it. You could use it by hand wheeling it. It was frozen up when I got it, and I've lubricated it and got it working. I've never tried to sew with it. I assume it works. It's basically a decoration, and probably at some point I'm going to get rid of this machine. I don't really have any need for it at all. This is the Singer 1200. This is a pretty rare machine, and not a lot of people know about it. I knew nothing about it until I found it. It's basically a Singer 201, and the Singer 201 is widely regarded as the finest domestic sewing machine ever made. It's a great machine. The 1200 version comes in an industrial style table, has a knee lift for the presser foot, like you would see in most industrial machines, and power is actuated by a big treadle instead of the little small pedal you would see with most domestic sewing machines. This machine is a remarkable machine. It sews a beautiful stitch, and it's incredibly sturdily built. I love it. Literally the day before I bought the 1200, I bought this 201. And again, the actual machine head is basically the same, but this is a standard 201. It doesn't have the knee lift or the industrial style table. This one is in need of rewiring. It works, but I'm probably going to get shocked if I try to use it, so it's going to get rewired before I use it. The next Singer machine I have from this era is this 1591. The 1591 is related to the 201 in that it has the direct drive or potted motor. This arrangement doesn't use any belt to drive the mechanism. The motor is attached directly to the mechanism. This machine was given to me by the same family friend that gave me the 348, and as you can see, it's a basket case and needs to be completely gone through. I hope at some point I'll get around to that. And then finally there's my beloved Singer 221 Featherweight. This machine is a family heirloom. It was passed down to me from my grandmother and then my mother. This is a 1936 machine. It works beautifully. By the way, as commentary on how well things used to be made, this machine sewed all of my mom's clothing from childhood through high school. At some point it got put in its case and stored for decades. I don't even know how long. When it was passed down to me, I took it out of the case, plugged it in, and started sewing with it, and it sews fantastically. I don't think many things made today could do that. Here's number 12. This is actually the second brand new sewing machine I've ever owned. And part of the reason for that is, at least in my experience, finding a serger on the used market significantly lower priced than new has been difficult. So I bought a brand new one. This is a Juki MO50EN. If you want to know what I think about this machine, well, you're going to have to wait until I actually use it, because I haven't even turned the thing on yet. I don't make a lot of clothing, but I'd like to do some stuff, and having a serger allows you to have finished edges much more easily than doing, other types of finished seams. So I thought I'd add one to the collection. Eventually I'll get a review video of it up once I learn how to use it. So this brings me to the real point of this video. I have all these sewing machines, and let's be honest, I don't use most of them most of the time. If I had to get down to one sewing machine, which one would I choose? I get this question a lot from people. Which sewing machine should I buy? I want to work on, this kind of project, and what should I get? And my answer is almost always, you really need two sewing machines. Out of all the sewing machines I have, if I had to get down to one sewing machine, it would be these two. Oh, hi. How are you? The Sailrite isn't what I would describe as buttery smooth. It's a little bit clunky, kind of like driving an old pickup. But when you need a pickup, you need a pickup. If I had the LSZ one, which is capable of zigzag stitching, that might be a little closer to being the one machine that can rule them all for me. But I still think I would want to have a second machine. The reason I would want two machines is sometimes I sew stuff out of this 1680 denier ballistic nylon. It's a very thick, heavy material. But sometimes I also sew stuff made out of 1.1 ounce silicone impregnated nylon or similar fabrics. This is really thin, slippery material. I'm aware that one can make adjustments to the Sailrite to make it sew thinner materials more capably, but it's just not the right tool for that job. I find that a vintage domestic machine like the Singer 237 does a better job on really thin materials, and it's much easier for me to just go to the other machine to do the job appropriate to that machine, rather than spend a lot of time making adjustments and changing needles and all the things you have to do to make this machine be able to sew that thinner material. At the same time, the Singer 237 can sew the thicker materials pretty well, but nowhere near as easily as the Sailrite can. Truthfully, a machine like the Singer 1200 or some of the other straight stitch only machines I have are actually probably the best for the really thin materials, but they don't have the versatility that the 237 has. As a second sewing machine, my Singer 237 has some pretty significant advantages. The older black Singers are arguably better machines, more sturdily built, but they're all straight stitch only, and I do like having zigzag in my arsenal somewhere. I don't use it very often, but it's nice to have, and it's really helpful for things like bar tacks. Compared to other domestic machines of a similar vintage, the 237 has the advantage of being all metal. All the internal gearing is metal. There's no plastic gears. The 348 I have has at least one nylon gear that could be a failure point. But maybe the number one reason why I would choose these two in particular... Hi. Thank you. I kind of need the people to see the machines. But probably the number one reason why I would choose these two machines in particular out of all the machines I own is they use the same bobbin. So that's a great advantage for me, because if I have a project that, say I'm doing straight stitching on the Sailrite and then need to do a zigzag stitch in part of it, I can just move over to the 237 and even use the same bobbin with the same thread loaded in it, rather than have to load a bobbin for a different machine with the thread that I'm using. That's a nice convenience, and it also means that however many bobbins I have are interchangeable between machines, rather than having to have a few bobbins for this one and a few bobbins for this one. So that's my opinion, and that's a look at my collection of sewing machines. If you're just starting out in sewing, I strongly suggest go to thrift stores, garage sales, your mom's attic, find vintage domestic sewing machines if you can, pay as little money as you can for them, learn how to thread a machine, learn how to wind a bobbin, learn how to sew an actual thing, because you can practice by making actual things with these machines. And then if you find that you need more capability, you can step up to something like this cat, the Sailrite. And, these domestics are inexpensive enough that for most people, you should be able to afford them pretty easily. And if it turns out not to be the right machine for you, you're not going to be in debt for 5 years paying for it. I hope you found that interesting. If you like this video, click on the old thumbs up button down below. If you're not a subscriber, I would love to have you subscribe to my channel. If you know anybody else who might be interested in what I do here, please share my videos with them. Thanks for watching. That was perfect.
I think that was great.
Yeah.